Rev up your engines! This is a Carvana car. It's weird, you buy it and they give you 7 days to check it out. Kind of putting a cart before the horse. We're gonna see if this thing has any hidden problems. We're gonna start with this little machine here. It is a V-Dyed paint thickness measure. We can see if this thing's been repainted and wrecked. 76.2. 76.9 microns. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. If it's only off 0.2 microns, that doesn't mean anything. Even the computers that spray paint them. But we're going to check all around the car to see if there's any spots. So far, they're all relatively close. You're going to find that different parts of the car are going to have different thicknesses because the machines aren't going to paint perfectly one piece versus another piece, especially vertical versus horizontal. What we're looking for is dramatic changes. But there's nothing outrageous yet. Okay, 7.5, 6.3 was probably hit in the back and repainted. I can kind of figure it out because when I look at the paint here, I can see it's somewhat irregular and there's a dimple here. Let's look under here. Yeah, you're always going to get little scratches because people bump into it. But what you want to look for is any serious damage under here, of which there's none. Somebody probably hit the rear and they had to repaint the trunk. That's no big deal. It looks good enough. But a perfectionist, when they see the waves here, they're not going to like it. Candy apple red's got a nice pop to it, but you can't see. It's got a little more sparkle up here than down here. Like I say, no big deal, but it's something to know. Now, this is a hybrid. It's not a plug-in hybrid. It's a regular hybrid. We got to get my fancy computer out to check the hybrid system out. With this hybrid system, hey, it gets 35 miles a gallon average. That's pretty good for a vehicle that's as fast and as relatively heavy and relatively high up in the ground as it is. And also taking into the fact that it is an all-wheel drive vehicle. It's phenomenal gas mod. Most all-wheel drive, they suck the gas down. So let's get out the fancy little computer. So here comes the real truth. Easy to get to. Toyota made it white so you can see the data port very easily. All right, it's setting itself up. Do auto scan. Got the VIN number, Rav4 Hybrid vehicle, automatic scan. Here we go. Look at this thing fly. Man, it's going through 32 systems. It's just flying through them. There's no codes there, no codes there. Okay, here's a failure. These lane keeping things, they're kind of funky. It says there's a problem in the history of the steering angle sensor. Now, you have any lights or anything on? A lot of times people fix these things and they don't reset them. So we'll check some more stuff. Here's another one. Failure in main body. Remote starter communication. Stop. That means that the remote starter acted up at one time. Another thing, you change the battery, it'll mess with the codes, so we're going to erase that too. Clear codes, and we'll check more stuff. Back door has a failure. Lost communication with control module. Again, sometimes the batteries go bad in these, the battery in the car is weak or replaced. People don't reset it, so we'll reset that too. There's codes like these that you should never be scared of, because they really don't mean all that much. So here's a combination meter. We'll see what that says. Communication is lost. Lost communication. Again, these are communication loss codes. Often going to be weak batteries. So I'll erase that too. Take it for a spin and see what happens. But before we do that, we'll start it up. Now, it is a hybrid, so it doesn't always start, but it started now. And we'll look at live data. You can see we have 220 points of data that we can look at. It's color-coded, so we're just going to watch things and see if anything looks odd. So far, everything looks pretty good. You can see there are 220 points of data. Batteries charging fine. Short-term fuel trim is 1.562. It's running slightly lean. Probably needs the fuel injectors cleaned. Ignition advance, you notice, is stable at 23, meaning the engine's in excellent shape. We're still going through the data. Nothing odd has been shown. It's perfect. It's got no misfire counts. 0 for all cylinders. So basically, it's in excellent shape. So let's take it for a spin. Now, this is a hybrid car, so other than the fan blowing, you don't hear anything. It's quiet. And being a Rav4, you're relatively high up in the ground. You got a good view. Give it a little gas. It's got plenty of horsepower with that extra boost. And when we do the regenerative braking, you can hear the whine of regenerating power. Now, the most popular one of these days is the Rav4 plug-in hybrid, where you can charge it and drive so far. This isn't a plug-in, but considering you can average 35 miles a gallon in a little SUV that goes as fast as this thing can, and also has an all-wheel drive transmission, you really can't complain. And although I'm not really a hybrid fan myself, if you're gonna buy a hybrid, you might as well buy a Toyota. They know what they're doing. They've been building these things for decades. It handles nice in the twisties, a lot better than the older Rav4s did. It also rides a lot better than the older Rav4s. They've definitely made the suspension system better than it used to be. And since this is a hybrid, we'll come to a stop at our little drag strip and then take off from 0. And it's got decent acceleration for something that gets 35 miles a gallon. Makes a lot of noise, but hey, it's got the nav screen and everything on it, and it gives you a lot of information about the gas mods that you're going to be getting. Now, of course, it's horrible gas mods because I'm driving like a maniac. A lesson to be learned. You want gas mods? Don't drive like I'm driving during this road test. I am driving this car hard because I want to see if there's any kind of problems that are going to show up, because if he's got a problem, he can take it back to Carvana and get his money back. So I'm going to be pushing this thing. When you turn the fan off, it's really quiet, especially if you turn the turn signal off. Because now the electric motor's just there, the engine isn't running. We'll see how it transitions when we take off, when that light turns green. Okay, we'll step in the gas. Pretty smooth transition. You barely recognize that the thing had started itself back up. Not a bad transition at all. See that when we step on the brake, now it's in charging mode and it's recharging the battery. Rather than reading numbers like the old Priuses, it's kind of cool to see a gauge that shows you how much it's charging with the gauge that's right in front of your eyes, so you don't have to look over there. You're looking straight down. It really handles nice in the twisties. It's a much better handling Rav4 than the earlier models were. It certainly has good viewing ports all around. There's no real blind spots. And I love these oversized mirrors. Now, as we drive it around with everything turned off, I'm listening to the wheel bearings and everything. There's no real roaring wheel bearings like if it had been in a big wreck, but it doesn't show signs of that. So I assume somebody tapped the rear of the vehicle and bent the trunk, and then they had to fix it and repaint it, and that's why the paint is a little off on the trunk, thicker on one side than the other, and has a little of a kind of uneven sheen when you look at it sideways. You can see the reflections aren't right. I really like the black and silver and gray interior. I think it really looks nice, especially the two-tone seats. A lot of carrying space. But really, I'm checking this thing out to see if it's worth buying. We'll go back to my little computer, and now we'll scan it again to see if any of the codes came back. And as we can see going through the mall, none of the codes have come back, so I'm assuming that was just because somebody changed the battery or the remote went bad, somebody replaced it and didn't reset anything. So electronically, mechanically, everything's fine. You gotta look under the hood though. He said it was in Michigan and Arizona. Well, I knew it was in Michigan, and here's how I can tell. See all this corrosion? That is aluminum pits. It's typical. You're gonna get corrosion in Michigan. It doesn't mean anything. You can also see the aluminum top of the engine, it's corroded too. That's just superficial corrosion. Now, if it would have been in Arizona, it wouldn't have had any corrosion at all. That's the only place it had been. But it spent some time in Michigan, and that's what gave it corrosion. No big deal, but it's something that you look at. You want to make sure. You can see the strut towers are fine. So it's just a superficial corrosion you're going to see from living in Michigan for a while. It's got dual cooling systems. You can see it's got the nice pink coolant. It's full, it's not low. Those are the high electricity wires, high voltage, orange. Don't touch them, leave them alone. That's not something you want to mess with. You can do stuff like change spark plugs when it wears out, air filter, stuff like that, but don't mess with the high voltage system. I think you got a great vehicle. Yeah, it was probably bumped in the back and repainted. Almost any car that's a few years old these days is going to be hit somewhere. Americans drive like lunatics. People are always running into the back of people. But at least in this case, the front wasn't run into. And the front is where everything is. Everything electronic is there. So the back getting hit in the trunk, no big deal. It tracks good. Nothing's particularly worn out. And one good sign is it came with these Yokohama tires, and they're wearing perfectly fine. You're looking at a used car that's got all brand new tires, or two on one front or rear, all brand new. Make you think, it might be a problem. They had to put new tires on to hide a problem it had, especially if they're like two cheap Chinese tires. They bought the cheapest ones you could. These are Yokohamas. These are good tires. Shows that there's no problems, there's no odd wear on them, so you got a good car. Now, you got to pay a lot these days. You had to pay 30 something for this. That's just the way it goes. You got no choice with that. But it checked out fine, so he did get a good car. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.